All right, so hopefully you found that interesting, kind of shocking. I know every time I see stuff like this, I'm like, well, I would hope I'd be in the, like 70% that doesn't elaborate. But, you know, the ability to connect details together, and try and draw conclusions, it makes us vulnerable to incorrect conclusions, right? It can cause us to put things together that don't belong together. Another sin of commission is suggestibility, that tendency to draw inferences, to see two things out in the environment and infer that one of them must be causing the other one, or that I was just watching a video where these deer were playing in a sprinkler, and a bunch of them were clearly fawns. They still had their spots on their back, but they must be getting older because they were almost as big as the one that didn't have spots on the back. But I drew the inference that this is the mom, and how does she have so many kids? And I don't know if they're all her kids. I don't know if they're related at all. There's just a bunch of deer playing in the sprinkler, and I drew the inference one's the mom and the other the kids. That now is my memory of that video, right? The mom deer and her kids are playing in the pool. That tendency to draw inferences makes us suggestible, right, to our own biases, to our own background or our expectations, all that top-down processing that we do. So sometimes our inferences are drawn based on retrieval cues, right? Like sometimes the environment is trying to help us to recall something. Let's say a teacher or a lawyer is trying to get an eyewitness on the witness stand to remember the details, or the police officer is interviewing the eyewitness, trying to help them to recall details. Sometimes in those situations, retrieval cues are provided that lead us to believe that something must have happened, or you wouldn't be asking that question. It must have happened like this because you're asking it like that. And so we modify our memory to be consistent with the line of questioning, whether it's a question on an exam, or it's, a lawyer or a police officer talking to an eyewitness. Those kinds of prompts, which are designed to try and help us to remember, can lead us, maybe we're not really remembering the information, but we're like, well, it must have been like that because you're asking me about it, right? So the retrieval cues can prompt it. It could be based on related knowledge. Sticking with the eyewitness example, a lot of times when, there's a robbery or something like that, the person who's in charge of locking up says, well, I locked the door. I always lock the door. And the police will say, but did you lock it that night? Do you have objective memory of that night locking it, right? The witness is saying, well, I had to have. I always lock it. Okay, but do you literally remember locking it that night? Because sometimes we can be absent-minded and not do our normal routine, can't we? How often do you search for something because you're like, I normally set it here so I don't lose it, but I must have set it down somewhere else, and I have no recollection of having set it down. And so now we're having a search. So the idea that, well, I did it, I must have done it because I always do it, is not, that's not memory. That's drawing an inference. Oftentimes we use our pre-existing knowledge base about some topic to help us to draw inferences about what's going on right now. And sometimes that can be faulty, right? The previous experiences that you may have had with this subject may have no relationship to what's going on right now, and may not be an appropriate sort of gap filler for the current experience. And so a lot of times our retrieval of our memories includes stuff that's related, but is not appropriate. All right, now this video really illustrates that. So I think you'll enjoy this malleable memory video. I'll see you on the other side of that.